The gavel came crashing down on the wooden block, and in a moment of time the entire courtroom came to a standstill. Cameras snapped, reporters hunched forward, and everyone's gaze was fixed on one man. Kody Brown, the father from Sister Wives. But this wasn't reality television anymore. This was life, and the stakes were higher than anything the world had ever witnessed on film. Freedom, family, and the battle against the very laws that sought to destroy them. The gavel's sound cracked through the air like a rifle shot. Bang! In that moment, the cacophonous courtroom quieted. Reporters suspended mid-scribble, photographers ceased clicking, and even the fidgety shuffling of the crowd stopped. Everyone's eyes were focused on the man who was at the center of it all, Kody Brown. This was not the reality TV drama of Sister Wives. There were no staged cameras for a television audience, no producers shaping the story. This was straight up, unfiltered, and frightening. For the first time in his life, Kody was not only explaining his decisions to America, he was explaining them to a judge, in a courtroom where a single misstep could determine the fate of his family. Kody sat stiff, his blonde locks neatly tied back, but the strain in his shoulders gave him away. Seated to his left were the four women who had constructed their existences alongside him. Meri, Janelle, Christine, and Robyn. They were not mere wives. They were his supporters, the mothers of his children, the pillars of a family that stretched far wider than most people could conceive. Behind them, critics and supporters alike occupied the gallery, anticipating a decision that could be historic. The voice of the judge finally shattered the silence. "Mr. Brown, you stand accused of breaking the laws of this state in that you practiced polygamy. Do you understand the charges against you?" 1,000 memories poured into Kody's mind. The endless meals, the vacations, the constant pandemonium of parenting 18 children. He was not a criminal. He was a father, a husband, a man who had taken a different road. He swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand." The weight of those words hung in the air. For years the Browns were a curiosity, even a spectacle. America watched as they juggled multiple households, shared milestones, and struggled with jealousy, love, and religion. Some people marveled at their bravery to be different. Others jeered. But no one could dispute this. They were living openly, not in secret, not in the underground. And that choice had led them here to a courtroom in which their lifestyle was in jeopardy. Meri sat in the front row, her hands clasped together so tightly that her knuckles bleached. She remembered that day they had agreed to document Sister Wives. They had taken the risk. Cameras guaranteed fame, sure, but exposure as well. And exposure guaranteed criticism from those who already despised their lifestyle. Now she was thinking, was it all a mistake? Christine looked nervously over at Kody, her brain racing with fear for her children. What would be the consequence if he were deported? How would she tell them that their dad wasn't there, because the state declared their family illegal? Janelle sat stiffly with her back straight, bracing herself to be calm, but a storm raged inside. Always the practical one. The voice of reason, she had never lost control. Yet even she could not stifle the nagging question in her mind. What if the court chose to make an example of them? And then there was Robyn, the newest wife. Tears shone in her eyes, but she kept her chin up. She had come into this family knowing the pitfalls, but she hadn't known about this. Reporters yelling questions, strangers judging her children, her marriage, her very existence. This was no longer TV reality. This was survival. The prosecutor pushed to his feet, zipping up his suit coat with studied composure. His voice was crisp, measured, the sort of tone crafted to persuade jurors and freeze spines. "Ladies and gentlemen," he started, "this case is not complex. The law is simple. Marriage in this state is one man and one woman. Mr. Brown has admitted in open admissions to having more than one wife. He has brazenly paraded it on the national television. He has taunted the law by challenging us to prevent him. And today we are here to do just that." Gasps spread around the room. Cameras snapped wildly. The prosecutor went on, striding calmly. "If we let this man live outside the law, then where do we draw the line? If one man may take 4 wives, what's next? Anarchy. The very pillars of our society, marriage and family, will be destroyed. He stopped for emphasis, allowing the words to sink in. Kody Brown is not a pioneer. He is not a freedom fighter. He is a man who made the decision to defy the law, and he has to pay the price. The gallery hummed with murmurs. Some of them nodded. Others scowled, ill at ease with the severity of the remarks. Kody sat silently, frozen still, but in his heart his blood was seething. To the prosecutor he was not a father, a husband, or a human being with feelings and conflicts. He was a symbol to be smashed. Then stood Kody's attorney, coming up with fire in his eyes. His voice exploded, firm and burning. Your Honor, this is not a case of crime. It is a case of choice. It is a case of freedom. He nodded toward the Brown family sitting in a group. My client is lawfully married to one woman, Meri Brown. That's the only marriage the state sanctions. The other relationships are spiritual marriages, personal vows of faith and love. There are no illicit documents. There is no deception. There is no force. What the state deems to be a crime is merely a family being different. He addressed the judge. Are we truly here to make a ruling on whether consenting adults can love one another in non-approved ways by the government? Are we truly going to inform these children that their parents should be incarcerated for having the audacity to live truthfully? His words ignited the room. Some of the gallery audience clapped before the bailiff cut them off. The Brown supporters leaned in, hope dancing in their eyes. Kody's heart swelled with gratitude. For the first time since entering that courtroom, he did not feel like a man on trial. He felt like a man fighting for something greater than himself. As the attorneys sparred, feelings raged. Every statement made by the prosecutor was like a slap in their face. Every counterattack from the defense was like a lifeline cast into turbulent waters. Christine struggled against tears, mouthing to herself, "We are not criminals. We are a family." Meri's eyes were shut in silent prayer, her heart praying for fortitude. Janelle took notes, vowing to keep her mind on the facts, though her hands shook. Robyn tightened her grip on Kody's arm, wordlessly letting him know she had faith in him. And Kody himself sat with his teeth clenched, eyes fixed in front of him. The cameras may have portrayed him as a husband torn between wives, as a jealous and erratic man, but here in this courtroom he was something else. A man at the intersection of law and love. At last the gavel came down again. Bang! This court will recess, the judge declared. The spell was broken. Journalists rushed for the door, phone against ear, voices shrill with excitement. Breaking news. Kody Brown in court. Microphones were pushed forward. Queries issued in rapid succession. Kody, do you regret sharing your life on television? Meri, are you concerned your marriage will be destroyed? Christine, do you feel your children will be hurt because of this lifestyle? The Browns defied them, standing in close-knit group. The din of the crowd dissipated as Kody spoke in hushed tones to his wives. No matter what happens, we don't break. We don't bend. We stand together. They nodded. Their skin was white, their eyes weary, but for an instant they drew strength, not from the law, not from the cameras, but from one another. And as they emerged from the courtroom, flashes of cameras blinding them, one question hung there, unspoken but palpable. The courtroom hummed with anxious energy as all returned from recess. The massive wooden doors groaned open, and the Brown family marched back in, moving as a unit despite the turbulence around them. Journalists had just spent the break hitting headlines nationwide. Sister wives star faces law in courtroom showdown. Polygamy trial of the century. Kody Brown husband-father. Criminal. The air was electric with tension. Everybody knew what hung in the balance. This wasn't about Kody Brown alone. This was about whether America's justice system could criminalize love. The judge, a gray-haired man with piercing eyes and an unruffled yet authoritative demeanor, re-entered the room. He struck his gavel once, reconnecting the silence. "We will now resume proceedings," he declared. Across from them sat the prosecution, cold, calculating, eager to make an example of the Browns. Across from them sat Kody and his family, a portrait of cohesion but of fear as well. Cameras panned across their faces, looking for openings in the facade. The attorney for the state didn't hesitate. He stood up from his chair, with a stack of documents in his hand that appeared to be as heavy as the words about to be spoken. "Your Honor," he started, "the case before you today isn't about religious freedom. It isn't about personal choice. It is about the law. And the law is unequivocal. Marriage here in this state is between one woman and one man. Mr. Brown has elected to disregard that law. He has flouted it. He has even publicized his contempt before millions of viewers on national television. He spun around, gesturing towards Kody. This man openly cohabits with 4 women, each introducing them as his wife. He has constructed a home founded on fraud and anarchy. If we permit this, then what is the value of having laws? Grunts and murmurs spread throughout the gallery. Some nodded, others scowled, shifting in their seats. The prosecutor's words were heavy, but they were also laced with a harsh note of condemnation. He went on, his voice mounting in fervor. Consider the children in this family. What lesson does it teach them when their father struts 4 wives on TV? What is the kind of lesson this sends society? The law has to define the line, and that line here, today in this court. The audience was quiet. His words hung suspended in the air like a knife. Kody's attorney stood, his voice serene but biting. Your Honor, the state would have you think this is a case about disorder. But it is not. This is a case about freedom. Freedom of adults to make their own decisions about their own lives. He nodded toward the Brown family sitting together. Absolutely, Mr. Brown cohabits with 4 women. Absolutely, they refer to themselves as wives. But let us be precise. Legally, he is married to but one, Meri Brown. The other marriages are spiritual, private expressions of faith and family. There is no law against cohabitation. There is no law against love. The state is attempting to criminalize not conduct, but identity. He stood facing the prosecutor. Is it against the law for roommates to share a home? No. Is it against the law for adults to live together, bring children into the world together, pool their funds together? No. So why, Your Honor, is it now against the law when love is on the line? The courtroom buzzed with whispers. The judge rapped his gavel for quiet. The defense attorney continued. An act of fraud, abuse, or harm by the state does not exist. An act of underage marriages by them does not exist. An act of coercion by them does not exist. What they do have is fear. Fear of a family that is unlike their own. But fear, Your Honor, is not criminal, and it cannot stand as the reason for prosecution. The judge leaned forward. Call your first witness, he ordered. The prosecution presented a state investigator to testify. He explained viewing sister wives, tracking the Browns' movements, and recording their plural marriage. He cited scenes from the show where Kody and his wives mentioned they were husband and wives. See, Your Honor, the prosecutor contended. He doesn't hide it, he brags about it. The defense responded. Words don't equal crime. Saying someone's a wife does not make them married. It makes them family by choice, not by law. The judge nodded but remained silent. Then it was the Browns' own turn. Meri, the elder wife, got up to testify. Her hands shook as she fiddled with the microphone. I legally married Kody many years ago, she started. But when Kody decided to live with other women, I didn't become ex-wife. I didn't become ex-partner. We both opted for this. The prosecutor bullied her. Mrs. Brown, isn't it true that you were aware that polygamy was illegal in Utah? Meri's voice trembled, but she did not waver. I knew. But I knew we weren't criminals. We weren't hurting nobody. We were raising our children, working, living like any other family. If that makes me a criminal, then the law is wrong. Her words hit hard. Supporters in the galleries murmured encouragement. Opponents frowned. Christine went next. She was nervous, but there was fire in her voice. People tell us we're dangerous. People tell us we're brainwashed. But I made this choice. I chose this family. We're not coercing anyone. We care for one another, and we share our lives. That's all. The prosecutor brusquely interrupted. Mrs. Brown, do you think one man has the right to marry 4 women? Christine's response was quick. I think people ought to be able to choose their family. Isn't that what America is all about? The audience gasped. Even the judge raised an eyebrow at her audacity. Janelle, the most practical of the wives, provided a measured, steady testimony. We pay our taxes. We work jobs. We raise children who attend school. We are no different than any other household, except that we live together as a larger family. Robyn, the youngest wife, spoke through tears. Our children ask us, are you going to jail, Mommy? Is Daddy going to jail? How do you tell them that? How do you tell them the law says your family is in the wrong? All we ever wanted was to live peacefully. That's all. Her words were a softening even to some of the toughest opponents in the room. At last Kody himself stood up. His voice was strong and weary. I know I'm not perfect. People have watched me argue with my wives on TV. Watch us struggle. But what they haven't witnessed is the love, the devotion, the nights we stay up fretting about our children's futures. We're not a spectacle. We're a family. And families should not be criminalized. He gazed straight at the judge. Your Honor, this isn't about me. It's about whether the government gets to dictate who we can and cannot love. Had I stayed hidden in the shadows, nobody would have given a damn. But because we dared to live openly, we're here. If honesty is a crime, then what kind of country are we living in? The room was suddenly silent. Even the prosecutor was momentarily taken aback. As testimony came to a close, the courtroom seemed to be holding its breath. Brown's supporters wiped away tears. Their detractors shook their heads and muttered about morality. The reporters clacked wildly, recording every word, every look, every second. The Browns sat back together, hands clasped, a fortress of unity against the tempest. For all their drama on TV, for all the envy, the bickering, the mayhem in this courtroom, they were invincible. But the war was far from won. The prosecutor stood again, prepared for cross-examination, to blow holes in their narrative. The defense prepared, and the judge, face as expressionless as granite, revealed nothing. The gavel had silenced once before. Now it threatened something else. A verdict that would alter the Browns' lives forever. The courtroom had been told the facts, the arguments and the legal definition. But now it was time for something stronger than laws and loopholes. It was time for the testimony of those who lived this life every day. The gallery was full. Supporters stood on one side, murmuring prayers under their breath. Critics stood on the other, crossed arms, waiting for the Browns to make a mistake, to say something that would prove polygamy was illegal. The atmosphere in the room was charged, hope and resentment crashing together in the presence of the judge. The voice of the judge boomed. We will now hear further testimonies. The defense may proceed. Kody's attorney nodded and rose. He knew this was the instant that might shift the balance. Facts would not win the trial, but the sheer, unadulterated humanity of the Browns, their suffering, their love, their terror could. Meri, Kody's first wife, slowly climbed into the stand. She appeared calm on the surface, but betrayed herself by her shaking hands. She fussed with the microphone, her voice gentle at first. I legally married Kody years ago. I understood what it was to share him with other women. But what they don't catch on television, what they don't catch in the news, is that this isn't about numbers. This is about family. This is about commitment. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom, settling for an instant on the prosecutor before leaving him and returning to the judge. Each day, I wake up and I raise children. I pay bills. I work. I am not a criminal, but the law wishes to inform me that the life that I lead, the family that I care for, make me illegal. How can love be illegal? Her voice broke, and for the first time, the cold metal of the courtroom yielded. Even some of the critics in the public gallery shifted uncomfortably. The prosecutor rose to cross-examine. Mrs. Brown, do you mean to say that you don't think the laws of this state have anything to do with you? Meri didn't blink. I think the laws are meant to protect families, not tear them apart. And if a law is tearing innocent families apart, then perhaps the law is in error. Then there was Christine. She had always had a hot-headed personality and did not hold back in that courtroom. I was raised believing in this lifestyle, she started, her eyes flashing. When I married Kody, I knew there would be other wives. Folks glance at us and think we're weird. What they don't notice is the happiness, the birthday parties, the family meals, the support system that exists when you have more than one mother in the house. The prosecutor attempted to cut her off, but Christine continued. You say we're criminals. You say we're doing something illegal. But you tell me, who am I hurting? Who? Show me the victim in this case. Because I don't see one. She was shouting now, and for an instant the courtroom ceased to be a courtroom. It was a stage, and Christine was not only addressing the judge, but the whole country. Daily I see my children cry, because they fear their dad could be taken from them. Is that justice? No. That's torture. She wept, tears streaming down her face, but did not waver. The judge had to hold up his hand to silence the murmurs in the courtroom. The prosecutor rose. Mrs. Brown, respectfully. Your emotions do not alter the law. Isn't it a fact that you voluntarily entered into a contract that you understood was against the law? Christine leaned forward, her tone biting. Yes, I was aware of the risk, but I was also aware of this. Love is not a crime. And regardless of what you say, regardless of what this court rules, I will never think it is. If Christine was fire, Janelle was stone. Unflappable, steady, unshakable. She stepped up to the stand with an air of inner confidence, pushing up the frame of her glasses as she stood ready to speak. I am a working mother. I commute to the office daily. I pay taxes. I take care of my children. If you saw my life without knowing who I was married to, you would find nothing out of the ordinary. I am like any ordinary woman, trying to balance work and family. She folded her hands prettily on the stand. The only thing that's different is I lived in a plural family. That option doesn't make me a criminal. That option doesn't make me unfit. That option is my own. The prosecutor attempted a new tack. Mrs. Brown, do you not feel that this lifestyle brings instability to your children? Janelle nodded her head decisively. My kids are healthy, happy, and loved. They have more support than most kids are ever going to know. They have several mothers, a father who loves them deeply, and brothers and sisters who stand together. That is not instability. That is strength. Her words hit hard. Some of the Browns' allies in the gallery were in tears. And last but not least, it was Robyn's turn. The youngest of the wives, she was frequently in the public eye as Kody's favorite, the one who had altered the family's dynamics. But in that courtroom, she wasn't a favorite wife. She was a mother who was fearful for her children's future. Her hands trembled as she started. My children are young. They don't get the law. They don't get it why our family is hated. But they do get this. They're afraid. They say to me, Mommy, is Daddy going to jail? Are you going to jail? How can you respond to that as a mother? Her face streamed with tears as she gazed straight at the judge. All we want is to be able to live. We're not demanding money. We're not demanding special treatment. We're just demanding the right to raise our children without the fear that the police will knock on our doorstep and take their father from us. The prosecutor shifted in his seat, likely realizing that questioning a sobbing mother would make him appear heartless. He was brief, but Robyn's evidence had already made an impression. Finally, it was Kody's turn once more. He stood up from his seat and made his way to the stand with deliberate steps. The gravity of the moment weighed heavily on him, but he bore it with the assurance of a man who knew that he had nothing to lose anymore. I know folks don't get it. He started. I know the jokes. I know the ridicule. I've heard it all. What people don't notice though are the nights we lie awake stressing about bills, about our children's report cards, about whether or not they're being bullied at school. We are no different than any other family. The only difference are more of us. He stopped, his gaze moving around the courtroom, holding each of his wives for a moment before coming to rest on the judge. I am not here to demand that you accept me. I am not here to demand that you accept my decisions. I am here to ask you one question. Do my family members deserve to exist, or does the state have the power to wipe us out because we don't meet their standard of normal? His voice became stronger, with the kind of fervor that quiets skepticism. If I had kept my family in the dark, if we had lied and pretended, no one would be standing here today. But we chose to tell the truth. We chose to live out in the open. And for that we're being punished. If honesty is a crime, then perhaps this court is punishing the wrong thing. The gallery was silent as a tomb. Even the air seemed thick, as if the walls themselves were catching their breath. After Kody concluded, the judge pushed back his chair, his face inscrutable. The prosecutor ruffled his papers. Yet for once, his assurance faltered. The defense remained still, aware that the testimonies had spoken louder than any legal reasoning could. Outside, cameras burst, reporters yelled, and headlines erupted nationwide. Within, the Browns sat in silence, hand in hand, their hearts racing as they awaited the next action. They had bared their souls. They had exposed their fear, their hope, their love. Now their destiny was in the hands of a system that never had been generous toward families like theirs. The gavel fell again. This court will reconvene tomorrow for additional arguments, the judge declared. And with that, the Browns were escorted out of the courtroom, still hand in hand, still intact, even as the storm of emotions swirled all around them. The following morning, courthouse steps were a media circus. News reporters stood shoving microphones in the faces of everyone with the surname Brown. Protesters waved signs, some saying, "Let them love," while others proclaimed, "One man, one woman." The Browns strode through the fray with their heads held high, flanked by lawyers and supporters. Inside, the air was thick with weight. Everyone was aware today would be the day that might make the Browns' battle end in loss or move toward winning. The judge appeared, unforgiving and inscrutable as always. He straightened his glasses, clicked his pen and nodded. "We will proceed. Prosecution, proceed." An attorney for the state, a tall man in his 40s with a reputation as a relentless tackler of cases, stood firmly upright. His voice was even but imbued with the authority of definitiveness. "Your Honor, yesterday we listened to emotional testimony. But this is not an emotional trial. It is a trial about the law. The Browns are not victims. They are violators." He walked slowly before the jury, meeting their eyes individually. They voluntarily entered into plural marriages, understanding that it is against state law. If we let this family disregard the law because they claim it's love, where do we draw the line? Do we let others disregard laws just because they believe they are right? Where do we draw the line? He left the words suspended before slamming down a folder on the table. The Browns would have you think this is about love, but this is about control. One man, multiple wives. They package it as religion, as a choice. But at its heart, it's exploitation. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Christine gritted her jaw. Meri grasped for Kody's hand. The attorney pushed further. "Kody Brown is not a victim. He's a manipulator. He professed honesty, but his honesty was founded on TV contracts and celebrity status. This case is not about liberty. It's about a man who thinks he's exempt from the law." The gallery murmured with gossip. The Browns fans squirmed uncomfortably. And for a second, it appeared the prosecution's knife had struck painfully deep. Then came the twist no one expected. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, "the state presents a surprise witness, a former member of the Brown family community." The doors opened and in came a man in his late 30s, anxious but resolute. The Browns' faces paled. This was someone they used to know. He took the stand, swore the oath and sat down. "I was in a polygamous community," he started, his voice low but even, not the Browns themselves, but the same group. "And I want to tell this court what actually goes on behind doors." The gallery leaned forward. The Browns stiffened. The man went on, describing a dark picture: young women coerced into wedlock, children bewildered by split loyalties, women hushed when they sought to leave. "This way of living hurts more than it heals," he stated unequivocally. "The Browns wish to have you believe they're different, but I've witnessed enough to understand. It always results in injury." The prosecutor addressed the jury. "You've heard from someone who experienced it. This isn't merely about the Browns. This is about preventing an injurious practice from spreading." The punch had been hard. Cameras snapped wildly. Writers took down notes. For the first time the Browns' confidence was shaken. But Kody's attorney wasn't done. He stood up slowly, zipping his coat, his tone mild but cutting. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've just heard is tragic. No one denies that abuse exists in some communities. But let's be very clear. This witness is not from the Brown family. He never lived in their home. He has never eaten at their table. He is painting with a broad brush, trying to use his painful past to condemn people he does not truly know." He addressed the jury, his voice stern. "Is it right to punish this family for things they never did? Is it right to judge them for things they never chose? The Browns are not guilty of all the tales of polygamy turned sour. They are guilty of their own lives, and only their own." He strode over to the Browns' table and put a hand on Kody's shoulder. "This man is not ideal. None of us are. But lack of perfection is not a sin. What he and his wives have created is not exploitation. It is family." The defense attorney's words started to sew up the damage. but the tension in the courtroom remained thick. The judge leaned forward, palms together. His voice sliced the din like a blade. This court is not sitting to determine whether or not polygamy is morally acceptable or not. This court is sitting to decide if the Browns have violated the law. The feelings, the statements, the narratives. These are important. But in the end, this case hangs on one thing. Is the Brown family guilty of breaking state law? Or are they victims of a law that is breaking their rights? The silence was strangling. Everyone in the room understood this was the crux of the case. Closing statements were permitted by the judge. Kody requested an opportunity to speak. Taking a deep breath, he stood before the courtroom. "I want to make one thing clear," he began, his voice steady. "We are not here asking for special treatment. We are not asking you to change your faith, your beliefs, or your lives. We are asking for one thing: the right to live ours without fear." He turned to the jury. "The prosecutor maintains I'm a manipulator, that I'm controlling my wives. But look at them. Do they appear controlled? Do they appear victimized? These women are stronger than I'll ever be. They're here because they want to be. If that choice makes us criminals, then the law is not safeguarding freedom. It's killing it." He paused, allowing his words to permeate. "We're not asking you to love us. We're not asking you to agree with us. We're asking you to let us exist." His voice cracked on the last word. For the first time, even the judge's face relaxed. The jury was sent out to consider their verdict, and the Browns sat silently, holding hands. Hours passed like days. The outside news media speculated wildly. Will the Browns be found guilty? Will polygamy be a winner or loser today? At last the bailiff's voice echoed. "All rise." The jury came back in, faces inscrutable. The judge took the paper, unfolded it, and started to read. "In the case of the state versus Kody Brown and family, we the jury find." The gallery breathed in unison. Cameras clicked, hearts beat fast. The verdict would alter everything. The foreman of the jury rose, a piece of paper shaking in his palm. The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick. Reporters gripped their pens. Supporters leaned forward. And even the judge's customary sternness gave way to the overwhelming expectation. "In the case of the state versus Kody Brown and family, we the jury find." Time stood still. The Browns waited with bated breath, their hands clasped together on the defense table. Kody's eyes flitted from the jury to his wives, seeking reassurance. The whole gallery was frozen in anticipation, holding their breaths for the words that would shatter or redeem their lives. "Not guilty." The room exploded. Shouts, gasps, and wails filled the air. Brown's supporters jumped to their feet, embracing each other, tears streaming down their cheeks. Protesters cried out in rage, storming out of the court, enraged at the ruling. Journalists rushed to record the turmoil, microphones thrust in all directions. But at the defense table the Browns stood stunned. Meri's hands flew to her face, as she sobbed. Christine gripped the edge of the table, her shoulders shaking. Janelle closed her eyes, whispering a prayer of relief. Robyn clutched Kody's arm as though afraid he might vanish if she let go. And Kody, he sat perfectly still, his lips trembling, before finally burying his face in his hands. They had won. Against all odds, they had won. The gavel came down hard on the block, commanding silence. The commotion died slowly, with the judge's voice ringing through the courtroom. "Today this case tested the letter of the law and the spirit of our Constitution. The jury has spoken, and this court will abide by it. The laws as they are written still stand, but it is evident that the Browns have not been guilty of the charges against them. They can go." His tone was even, but there was something in his eyes, a silent recognition, that this trial was larger than the Browns. It was about freedom, about the conflict between tradition and progress, about where to draw the line between morality and law. The family embraced as though they had just survived a war. Meri wept openly, holding Christine tightly. Janelle steadied Robyn, who was nearly collapsing under the weight of relief. Kody stood at the center, his arms around all of them, whispering over and over, "We're free, we're free." The gallery buzzed, some clapping, some booing, but all recognizing that history had just been made. The camera flashes blinded them as they exited the courtroom. Microphones were thrust into their faces. Do you have any reaction to the verdict? Do you think that it will change the law for others? What do you have to say to critics who have branded this a defeat for justice? Kody lifted his hand, his voice firm in the midst of weariness in his eyes. We are thankful. Thankful to the jury for recognizing us as human beings and not as offenders. This is not merely our win. It is the win of every family who has had to live in fear because of their love. We do not expect people to agree with us. We just request that people honor our right to live peacefully. Christine braced herself against the microphone, her passionate flame unbroken. And to those who still despise us, I say this: love is not a crime. You can't legislate love out of existence. Outside the courthouse stairs were pandemonium. Supporters cheered, chanting "Let them love." Protesters retorting with equal outrage. The media covered the verdict on every major channel. Headlines flashed instantly. Brown family walks free. Polygamy trial ends in acquittal. Love or law? Jury decides in favor of sister wives. Historic verdict shakes the nation. Televised legal experts wrangled back and forth. Some suggested the verdict was a reflection of a more progressive and individualistic society. Others cautioned it was the start of legal anarchy, paving the way for other plural marriages. But to the Browns, none of that counted at that instant. All they cared about was that they could go home together. Later that night, after the cameras and crowds went away, the Browns sat in their home together. The children, who had been protected from so much of what was said in court, today clung to their parents with relief. Laughter mingled with tears as they tried to make sense of the whirlwind of the last few weeks. "You guys were calling to say we were going to lose everything," Meri whispered. Christine nodded, smearing her eyes. "So did I. But perhaps now we can finally breathe." Janelle spoke softly. "This doesn't put an end to the fight, but it allows us to keep living." Robyn, clutching her youngest to her side, whispered, "At least our children don't have to fear anymore." Kody regarded all of them, his eyes shining. "We battled, we took a chance with everything, and we were together. Regardless of what comes next, what others say to us, we know who we are, and no judge can take that away." The ruling didn't just conclude the Browns' trial, it sent shockwaves nationwide. Families in the same situation came forward. Inspired by the Browns' win, activists declared it a turning point on the debate for marriage rights. Politicians promised to appeal the ruling, labeling it as dangerous. It was a battle that raged on television talk shows, in the churches, in the halls of universities. Was it about freedom or the dismantling of tradition? Was polygamy a personal choice or a danger to society's fabric? The Browns were reluctant heroes of a wider conflict. Heroes to some, villains to others. But amidst it all, there was one thing that held true. They had weathered the storm and lived. In a candid moment, Kody addressed a documentary crew filming outside their house. What he said would later be broadcast on networks, capturing the essence of their journey. "You know, people assume reality television is drama. But this was reality. We weren't fighting for numbers, for dollars, for glory. We were fighting for our lives, for our right to love, for the future of our children. And I don't know what tomorrow is. But today we are free." The camera pulled back, and the Browns were seen standing together, their children playing in the yard, their laughter blending with the receding sunset. For the first time, there was no chaos, no terror, only the still, delicate loveliness of a family that had been tried by fire and emerged transformed. The echo of the gavel might have died away, but the Browns' tale was by no means finished. It was barely begun.